Hi, my name is Jane McCurry with Clean Fuels Michigan, and I'm here today to talk about how you can install EV chargers as a resident amenity for free using government incentives.
Welcome to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owners Association, where real estate investors have found success since 1968. I'm your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group. This episode is sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And RCB and Associates, helping real estate investors and small business owners navigate the complex world of health insurance and Medicare benefits at rcbassociatesllc.com. Get ready for the Midwest Real Estate Investor Conference in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Join hundreds of real estate investors for networking, learning, and growth. Be sure to mark your calendars for April 24th and 25th of 2025. Hello and welcome to episode 478. Electric vehicle charging is becoming an essential amenity for rental property owners, helping to attract tenants and future-proof their investments. But many real estate investors don't know where to start or how to fund these upgrades. My guest today, Jane McCurry, is the Executive Director of Clean Fuels Michigan, a nonprofit advancing clean transportation. She's here to discuss a new grant program for multifamily property owners in Michigan and across the country, and why EV charging is an opportunity landlords across the country should be paying attention to. Jane, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Brian. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm excited to talk about EV charging because I do think it's a great way to future-proof your property. And I know, one of the questions that I've always had, because I've been looking at installing EV chargers for 10 years, and for whatever reason, I haven't pulled the trigger on any of my properties. But there are grants and programs out there available to do that. And I know you're going to share some of those with us, but set the table for us first. I mean, when we talk about EV chargers, why is it important for real estate investors who own multifamily property or any type of real estate? Why is it important for them to consider installing these on their properties?
It's important because I really do think that tenants are beginning to demand and look for access to overnight charging. When we look at EV adoption around the country, about 1 in 10 new vehicles sold is an electric vehicle or an EV today, and we expect that to continue to grow over the coming years. So you're looking at about 10% of car buyers picking an electric vehicle. That's going to continue to grow. And overnight charging is a hallmark. It's a staple of electric vehicle ownership. So if you think about living in a single family home, adding a charger or a 240 volt outlet to your garage is really pretty easy. You can call up your electrician or your utility and get that done quickly, or maybe even the car dealership helps you do that and pays for that for you. But if you're living in a multifamily property, you don't have that much control and you don't have that much access to provide overnight charging for yourself. And so for those who are looking to purchase an electric vehicle or who already have an EV, they're looking for apartment buildings that have access to overnight charging that they can rely on to provide them the convenience of driving an electric vehicle. One of the great things about driving an EV is you can wake up to a full battery and you don't have to take those extra trips to the gas station. And so as EV demand increases, it's an amenity that people are really looking for in their apartment buildings and condos.
What do you see as the future of EVs? I mean, I know that up until recently, it seemed like more and more people were going to buy EVs, but we now have a new administration that seems to be kind of anti-EV, even though Elon Musk is part of that administration. Is it still a good investment, or is the tide turning against EV cars?
The EV ball is rolling downhill. Contrary to what some news headlines might say, EV adoption isn't backsliding. It's maybe slowing a bit, and that makes sense as we look at technology adoption curves. Typically, you have your early adopters, and that starts kind of this hockey stick adoption where you get the ball rolling and then adoption grows really quickly, and then it slows down for a minute and you see a plateau in growth. It's still growing, just not as quickly as it was 2 years ago as we transition into the mass market. So we're in that kind of lull period between the early adopters and the mass market. But every major auto manufacturer has invested millions, if not billions of dollars in EV research, development, manufacturing, engineering, et cetera. And so I really do believe, and if we look at the adoption data, it shows that EV adoption is continuing to grow substantially and will continue to grow in the future, no matter what political party is in charge in DC.
I think I heard you say that 1 in 10 cars purchased today is an EV. Project that out, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. What's that going to look like?
It depends on which projections you trust, obviously. But estimates range from 30 to 50 to 60% of new car sales by 2030, 2035. So we could see really substantial growth. In Michigan, we've got a goal to deploy 2 million electric vehicles on our roads. And so that's a substantial portion of vehicles on the road, not just vehicle sales. In Michigan, that equates to about 20% of vehicles on the road if we have 2 million EVs. And so we could be looking at pretty substantial numbers in the next 10 or so years.
Let's discuss, and I know you're here to kind of share some information that's Michigan specific, but then also speak to people across the country. But let's discuss some of the programs and grants and incentives that are out there to help rental property owners, multifamily owners, actually afford to be able to put these on their property.
I'm really excited that Michigan is offering a new clean fuel and charging infrastructure program. There's $5 million available from the state to support property owners in installing electric vehicle chargers. The program requires a 30% match, so it can cover up to 70% of the cost of the project, unless the property is in a environmental justice zone, and then it can cover up to 100% of the cost of installing electric vehicle chargers. I know this is a Michigan-specific opportunity, but again, it could allow multifamily properties in Michigan to get chargers for free with state money, which I think is really exciting. As we look, beyond Michigan, including Michigan, but also beyond Michigan, there are also federal tax credits. Property owners that install EV chargers and or other alternative fuel infrastructure are eligible for up to a 30% tax credit, up to $100,000 per charger. So again, we're talking big dollar amounts to invest in chargers. Level 2 charger is not going to cost you $100,000. Level 2 is what your residents want to charge their vehicle overnight. They're not that expensive. So we're talking big dollar amounts for fairly cost-effective technology, depending on which solution you pick. That's called the 30C tax credit. And then there are also really robust utility programs across the country. Here in Michigan, there are utilities like DTE Energy and Consumers Energy, which offer make-ready grants and rebates for these. And so they can help you cover the cost of upgrading your electrical panel and then getting the power to those parking spots. For example, Consumers Energy offers up to $7,500 for installing overnight EV chargers for resident use. And there are utilities across the country that offer very similar programs. So the first step, if you're thinking about installing EV chargers, is to call up your local utility, ask them what support they have available, and if they can help you determine what the best solution for you is.
So in Michigan here, there's a program that will pay up to 70% of the cost of installation. But there's several costs, right? Because there's the cost of installation of actually installing the actual EV charger, but then there's the utility costs, which you addressed as far as like getting the utilities to the location where the EV charger is going to be installed. So if you're going to install an EV charger, what are some of the ballpark costs that you should anticipate?
It can vary quite a bit depending on your property and what charging solution you pick. Ballpark numbers, I would say on the low end, it's going to cost about $1,000 for the charging device, plus whatever installation and electrical costs you may need, which could range from another $1,000 to $10,000 or more if it's an older building or you have to trench through a parking lot or upgrade the electrical panel. That said, every charging solution is very unique, and property owners can pick a solution that works for them and their residents, ranging from a very simple charger with one plug on the wall that doesn't have internet connectivity to something that is connected to the internet, and you can vary out pricing structures so that you can make sure that only your residents are using it during certain hours or charge them for their use. So again, it's highly variable, but ballpark $5,000 for a level 2 charging port is somewhere in the low end of costs.
And explain the level 2, level 1, level 3 chargers. What's the difference?
So a level 1 charger is essentially your typical wall outlet. So many cars come with a plug. That plug is either a level 1 or a level 2. You plug that straight into the wall. Level 1 means your regular wall outlet, just like your laptop or your phone charger. Level 2 is a 240 volt outlet. So that's, your electric clothes dryer. Many cars do come with that level 2 cord. So it looks like a very robust laptop charger. You can plug into that NEMO 1450 outlet in your garage. Or level 2s can look like a pedestal or a box on the wall with a plug coming out of it. That's really what you want for kind of your everyday driver. They're driving to work and back and to get groceries and want to make sure that they can wake up in the morning with a full charge. DC fast charging, or sometimes called level 3 charging, is very high power, 440 volts and up, likely not needed at an apartment building unless your goal is to provide charging for your residents and other users. Those DC fast chargers, they look kind of like a refrigerator in a parking lot. They're larger units. And that's what drivers are looking for on long road trips, to charge up in less than an hour.
If one installs a level 2 charger at their apartment building, how long would it take for that to fill up a battery full charge?
A level 1 charger adds about 2 to 5 miles an hour to the car battery, and a level 2 charger adds about 10 to 25 miles an hour. So for someone who doesn't drive very much, a level 1 charger could be absolutely fine. They can plug their car in, let it sit there for 8 hours, get their 40 miles back overnight and be fine in the morning. For folks with longer commutes or who have more irregularity in their driving, level 2 provides a lot of assuredness that they'll be able to recharge even an almost depleted battery overnight.
So going back to the Michigan incentives, you can get up to 70% of the cost of installation covered. Does that also include the electrical work as well?
It does. It's entire project cost, everything from planning and upgrading the electrical to purchasing and installing that device and getting your permits and your inspection done.
And you said you could actually get up to 100% if you're in did you say economic justice or environmental justice community?
In an environmental justice community, as determined by the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy, which is the department that is offering this grant.
What does that mean?
We call it EAGLE. The Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy has done some really extensive studies on Michigan communities, and they've identified environmental justice or justice-worthy communities based on varying layers of census data, including rural areas, disadvantaged areas, areas where there's higher populations of BIPOC communities and things like that. And there's wonderful resources online for property owners who are curious if they're in those zones. There is an extensive map available on the program website where you can check that out and learn more.
Walk us through the process here, because it's one thing to say, okay, go look, contact your utility company to find out what they'll cover. But I've been looking at installing EVs, and my wife's been helping me on the side trying to figure it out. But I get bogged down in just the choices, like what type of charger do I put in? Who do I contact first? In what order? Who's going to come and just make it easy for me and say, here's your charger, we're going to install it, and here's all the incentives, and you just write us a check for a couple $1,000s. I mean, walk me through the process, and all the other multifamily owners that are listening. Walk us through that process of how we would actually make this happen.
I understand that it can feel daunting. It's a new technology. It's a construction and electrical upgrade. And one of the reasons we created this resource is to help multifamily property owners wade through all of the various options and decisions as they think about making this upgrade at their property. And in the resource, we have a planning checklist. And the very first thing on the planning checklist is identify your project partners, because they can educate you and help you make these decisions and apply for all of the incentives. Your project team includes your local electric utility. As soon as you're thinking about installing EV chargers, call your utility. They might have wonderful teams that can help you do everything else on this checklist. Call your electrical contractor. I'm sure property owners have wonderful relationships with electrical contractors. Call them up and see if they have installed EV chargers at other properties, if that's something that they specialize in. they might be your main point of contact, especially if your utility doesn't have those robust programs and folks that can help you out. And then finally, after you've called both of those two people, if you're still looking for help, start reaching out to some charging infrastructure providers. If you Google electric vehicle charging, multifamily properties, you're going to have a choice of many different charging hardware and software providers. Call one that has good reviews. You can check out Clean Fuels Michigan website and look at our list of members. We've got several of them as our members, and they can help you as well. They want to sell you their products, and so they'll help you find those grants and opportunities and work with your utility as well.
I'd like to take a moment to tell you about Green Property Management. Not only do they manage everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area, they also manage my entire portfolio. So I can tell you from personal experience that their unique flat fee management style is worth a closer look. If you feel that your property isn't operating to its fullest potential, then Green Property Management can help you take a holistic approach that will save you money, eliminate your headaches, and increase your net income. And if you're a property manager interested in applying Green Property Management's model, give them a call at 1-866-95-GREEN or visit them on the web at greenpropertymgt.com. If you're thinking of leaving your W-2 job and becoming a full-time real estate investor, one of the greatest costs you must consider is healthcare for you and your family. When I made this transition myself, I found the whole healthcare insurance process to be confusing and frustrating. That's why I'm glad I met Chad Creasy at RCB and Associates. Chad is a professional health insurance agent who helps real estate investors and small business owners understand and choose their best healthcare options. And best of all, his services are covered by the insurance company and won't cost you a dime. If you live in Michigan and are expecting a change in your healthcare insurance coverage for any reason, or losing employer coverage or transitioning into Medicare, then you owe it to yourself to contact Chad Creasy at rcbassociatesllc.com. Save the date for the Midwest Real Estate Investor Conference happening April 24th and 25th of 2025 in Grand Rapids, Michigan. This event is the perfect place to connect with fellow real estate investors, gain valuable insights, and elevate your real estate game. With a lineup of expert speakers and numerous networking opportunities, you won't want to miss it. In Michigan, we have this what is the program called in Michigan that will pay up to 70%?
The Charging and Fueling Grant Program.
And is there information on the Clean Fuels Michigan website about that?
There is. I misspoke. I'm sorry. The Clean Fuel and Charging Infrastructure Program offered by Eagle. And there is a blog post on the Clean Fuels Michigan website that details the grant program and this resource that I mentioned and links you out to every other resource that you might want to find to get started in this process.
Now let's talk about the rest of the country and what other grants, incentives might be available that people outside of Michigan could leverage.
Those tax credits that I mentioned are available nationwide. So again, that's up to $100,000 per charger. Again, there are some geographic constraints to that, and I urge you to check out the 30C tax credit eligibility locator tool, which is also linked in that resource to determine what tax credit is available depending on what location you're in.
What is the tax credit? What is the name of that?
That is the Alternative Fuel Vehicle Refueling Property Tax Credit. Very long government jargon, 30C tax credit. And essentially it is saying that if you own property and you're investing in alternative fueling infrastructure or EV chargers, the government will give you a tax credit on your income taxes for the year in which you installed those chargers, up to 30% or up to $100,000 per charge port.
Other programs that might be available nationally?
Utility programs. One example, which again, I know of because I'm in Michigan, the Indiana-Michigan Power Utility covers multiple states. They offer tax credits, or I'm sorry, not tax credits. They offer rebates for installing level 2 chargers at multifamily properties. There are many other large utilities that offer electric vehicle chargers, large and small utilities. So check out your local utility and see if they can offer you make-ready grants for make-ready or the EV chargers.
Do you want to say anything about the NEVI funding? Because that came across my desk because I was looking at a property that was right off a freeway. and had great access, and you could put the level 3 fast chargers there. And there's a program called the NEVI funding or whatever. But tell us a little bit about that and who might be able to access it.
NEVI stands for National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program. And this is a federal program, $7.5 billion nationwide. That money is being allocated out to states. So every state is running their own NEVI program. And that program is putting high power DC fast chargers every 50 miles along almost every major highway, corridor, and interstate in the country. So in Michigan, our Department of Transportation is running this program, and they've placed dots on a map saying this is the most efficient and effective use of our NEVI money. And we want to put chargers at these dots on the map over the next few years. And so that's another great opportunity where there's quite literally billions of dollars nationwide to install very high power, very expensive charging systems, using state and federal funded grants and incentives. And so that is a great opportunity, especially for those properties that are located within a mile of an interstate highway and are looking to provide charging not only to their residents, but to the broader community.
Yeah, and that is a way to monetize as well. And then maybe we should talk about that too. I mean, installing these chargers isn't just a way to provide an amenity for your residents. It's also, in many cases, another stream of income from the properties. Can you talk about that and like how profit sharing might take place?
Yeah, absolutely. And just so your listeners know, I definitely don't have the real estate chops that you do, but I do own 2 duplexes. So I have a little bit of that property owner mindset. And I know how costly these upgrades could be if there aren't incentives available. And so I want to urge people, consider these incentives while they're available and consider the opportunities to grow your business and increase your property value with potentially free chargers. There are many options for monetizing chargers. It depends a lot on how you want to run your business, what your residents' interest looks like, and what kind of chargers you pick. To kind of start at the beginning, there are options to own the chargers yourself. We call that site host owned. So as the site host or the property owner, you own those chargers. You get to determine what the pricing structure is to sell access to those chargers. And you could decide, it's free, it's an amenity. I think I'll get more residents, or my residents will stay longer because they know that they have access to the chargers. Or you could add money to your rent or your parking rent, or you could charge folks for their access by how much electricity they're drawing or how long they're plugged in. Various options. We call that pay per use. So you're charging for the actual electricity that you're drawing from that station. A membership model is another option where residents, for example, pay $50 a month to have access to the charger, and you can add that to their rent or their parking rent. So lots of options depending on what your specific situation is and what kind of chargers you have.
Well, that's an important thing to know, is you could actually make money off. So not only could you get a lot of the installation covered, but the investment you do put into it, you could have paid back in a year or two, depending on how many, what you install and what you decide to charge for it. Jane, before I kind of wrap it up and ask you my final questions, is there any other programs or grants or incentives available out there that you want to mention?
There are tons, and I don't want to go through an exhaustive list nationwide, but if anyone listening has questions or wants some insights, I'm more than happy to help. Feel free to reach out to us at Clean Fuels Michigan, even if you're not in the state of Michigan, and we will do our very best to support you in looking for those opportunities.
With this new administration that has come in, they seem to be shutting everything down and turning off the funding for a lot of these programs. What does it look like as far as these grants, incentives, tax credits, what have you, in 2025? Are they still going to be around?
There are still a few question marks as to what the new administration means for some of these grants and tax credits. That said, state and utility funded incentive programs are not going anywhere. Keep an eye on that property alternative refueling property tax credit that I mentioned. There is some concern that some of these tax credits will be rolled back. The NEVI program, much of those dollars have already been allocated to states. And so they've gone from federal coffers to state coffers, and they cannot be clawed back. So those will continue to be awarded nationwide. Where we have question marks is, in the additional grants that we were expecting to roll out over the next year or so, some of the last tranches of that NEVI funding. And I think there'll be question marks for a little while. How quickly can these government programs screech to a halt, or, those dollars be reallocated? And so I urge everyone to be cautiously optimistic about what the landscape looks like, but know that your utility programs and your state-funded programs aren't going anywhere.
Your final message to anyone who's on the fence about installing EV chargers at their multifamily property?
To make it more real, I am one of those folks who picked an apartment because there was access to electric vehicle chargers. I graduated college and I moved into a luxury apartment. When I did my tour there, I had to wear a hard hat. It was brand new. About a year later, working in the EV industry, it was time to sign my renewal lease offer. And I knew I wanted to buy an electric car. I saved up for my first year of employment, wanted to buy myself an EV. And there was only one charger in the basement, and I didn't have a dedicated parking spot if I wanted to use that charger. So I would have to, fight the other residents to have access to that charger. And so I actually moved. It was a great apartment. I had a wonderful view. I loved living there, but I picked an apartment that I would have a dedicated level 2 charger so that I knew I could wake up every day and have access to my electric vehicle. And so it's not a hypothetical. There are real people in the world that are picking their apartment buildings based on access to charging. And so I think that's my final message is this is real. People are driving EVs now. And so I encourage you to take a look at whether it's the right time to take the plunge in adding EV charging as an amenity.
And this program is for multifamily properties. What is considered a multifamily? A duplex on up, or is there a certain number of units that it has to be?
I believe for the Michigan grant, they consider multifamily 4 units and up.
Once again, tell our listeners how they can find out more about these programs, contact Clean Fuels Michigan, get the information that's out there and available.
Cleanfuelsmichigan.org has tons of resources for the clean mobility industry. Our electric vehicle charging for multifamily properties guide was just launched. You can find that there, as well as links to all of the various funding opportunities that I mentioned today.
What is your favorite hack or app?
My favorite hack is have a good jobs folder in your email. When someone emails you and says, "Thank you so much for your help on this. You did a great job," put that in a good jobs folder in your email. So when you have a down day, you can go and say, "I am good at my job." It's really nice to have that pick me up sometimes.
Thanks for coming on the show today to talk about something that's very, important and I think accessible to a lot of our listeners who own rental property. Having EV chargers at your site, I'm convinced is a great idea. It does future-proof your property. And like you say, it helps attract and retain good residents. Because I think if you look at the demographic that's going to own EV chargers, those are the kind of residents you want to keep at your property. And thank you so much for sharing the information of what's available out there, both in Michigan and across the country. Jane, it's been a real pleasure talking with you today.
Yeah, thank you again. It was really great talking with you, Brian.
I want to thank everybody for listening to this episode. I'm your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group, and you can find out more about me by going to higinvestor.com. That's higinvestor.com. And you can also ask questions and join us on Facebook by going to RPOA, Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast. And remember to save the date for the Midwest Real Estate Investor Conference on April 24th and 25th of 2025 in Grand Rapids, Michigan. It's going to be an event you won't want to miss, packed with invaluable sessions and opportunities to connect with like-minded investors. Keep listening for more updates, and we look forward to seeing you there. This episode was sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And RCB & Associates, helping real estate investors and small business owners navigate the complex world of health insurance and Medicare benefits at rcbassociatesllc.com.
You've been listening to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association. You can find out more at rpoaonline.org. If you enjoyed this podcast, please go to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and review.